On January 12, 1852, Sarah Chesham delivered a parcel to a neighbour's cottage in Essex. By nightfall, a child was dead. The coroner ordered a post-mortem and chemical analysis. The inquest papers and trial transcript document what followed. On the morning of January 12, 1852, Sarah Chesham called at a neighbouring cottage in the village and left a small parcel at the threshold. Within an hour, the household reported the child who had handled the parcel was taken with vomiting and violent retching. The householder sent for the parish constable by the afternoon. The constable recorded the time in his pocketbook as 3:45. By dusk, the child had grown listless and was conveyed to the workhouse infirmary, where the medical officer recorded convulsions and persistent vomiting at 8:20. The surgeon on duty examined the child and noted a blistered throat and pallor. He ordered stimulants and a mustard plaster. Before midnight, the child died. The workhouse clerk entered the death in the register at 11:10, and the parish bell toll was recorded by the sexton. The constable sealed the parcel in a small glass bottle found beside the cot and enclosed it in folded paper, then marked and signed the seal with his initials. A neighbour gave a formal statement to the constable that the parcel had not been in the cottage earlier that morning, and that Sarah Chesham had been seen leaving it near the child's bed at 9:30. The coroner for the district was notified before dawn the next day and set an inquest to be held within 3 days. Damp hung in the cottages and soot traced the lintel where the parcel had been laid. Gas lamps guttered at the lane's turn, and the constable noted the names of 2 additional witnesses in his memorandum book. The surgeon at the workhouse was summoned to the coroner's inquest and placed the body under pathologic examination in the workhouse mortuary the following morning. The parcel, the glass bottle, and a sample of stomach contents were recorded in the coroner's inventory and retained in sealed glass vials, pending analysis. Keys rattled somewhere in the stone passage beyond as the inquest list was read aloud by the coroner's clerk. The inquest was scheduled for January 15th, and the coroner requested chemical analysis. The coroner's summons named a medical officer from the county town and directed that the exhibits be forwarded to him, sealed and accompanied by a statement of symptoms. At 9 o'clock on January 15th, the coroner opened the inquest in the vestry room of the parish church and swore the witnesses, the first of whom was the constable who had sealed the parcel. He produced his pocketbook and read the entry. Parcel left at threshold by Sarah Chesham, 9:30 January 12th. And the surgeon gave his statement to the coroner and exhibited the child's stomach contents preserved in a glass tube, noting corrosion of the stomach lining and extensive vomiting in his written account. Parish relief records were consulted at the clerk's request and showed the household had applied for assistance twice in the preceding winter. The household ledger contained entries for rent arrears of 3 weeks. The coroner ordered the exhibits to be sent to the county medical officer in the town at once, and the sealed samples were forwarded by cart under police escort that afternoon. The county medical officer received the samples on January 17th and advertised that chemical analysis would be performed using the Marsh Test, then in regular use for arsenical compounds. Coal smoke seeped through the stone vents, mixing with dampness. The county chemist recorded receipt of the sealed exhibits at 9:15 and performed the Marsh Test that evening, noting the procedure and the reagents used in his laboratory ledger with a dated entry. The chemist recorded a reaction consistent with arsenical compounds in the stomach contents and in residue from the parcel's contents. He prepared a certificate detailing the quantities found and the method employed. The constable interviewed the apothecary in the adjacent market town and located an entry in the apothecary's daybook for the sale of a white powder on December 29th, the daybook bearing a signature resembling that of the accused. The accused was brought before the magistrate on January 19th, and according to the magistrate's docket, was committed for trial at the Assize to be held at the county town. The accused gave a statement to the attending constable in the lockup. "The child had been ill since morning," she told the constable, and the constable recorded the words in his notebook. The apothecary's ledger, the chemist's certificate, and the constable's pocketbook were listed in the committal papers. The chemist performed a chemical analysis consistent with methods in use at the time, and recorded his result in his laboratory ledger, noting a detection characteristic of arsenical compounds by the Marsh Test procedure and stating the quantity recovered from the stomach contents, arsenic, sufficient for a fatal dose. The committal hearing was set for January 20th, and the clerk of the peace prepared the depositions for transmission to the Assize Court. On January 20th, the magistrate examined the depositions in the Petty Sessions Room and committed the accused to stand trial at the next sitting of the Assize. The committal order bears the magistrate's signature and the bench seal. Witness lists were drawn and subpoenas issued for the county chemist, the workhouse surgeon, the apothecary and the constable. The coronial record and the sealed exhibits were enclosed in the committal packet. The prison van conveyed the accused to the county jail on January 22nd, and the jail register records her arrival at 9 o'clock, entry number 208. The clerk of the Assize prepared the indictment, charging willful murder, and the indictment was endorsed with the names of the Crown Prosecutor and the date of trial, set for March the 1st. Morning brought rain that blurred the courier's ink. A defence counsel was assigned from the Assize list and served notice to the Crown of intended pleas and witnesses. The defence applied to inspect the chemist's certificate and the apothecary's daybook, and the court officer noted the defence's request in the docket at 2:30 on January 25th. The clerk annotated the depositions with copies of the constable's memoranda and a transcription of the apothecary's entry. The transcription was compared to samples of the accused's handwriting from the parish poorhouse records. The prosecutor lodged the chemist's certificate and the original sealed exhibits in the court's evidence chest on February the 15th, and the exhibits were logged in the Assize evidence register with the officer's initials across the sealing wax. Frost gathered on the inside of the cell window. Witnesses were examined on commission in late February, and their depositions taken before the recorder and deposited with the Assize papers. 2 neighbours confirmed the accused's presence at the cottage on January 12th, and the apothecary produced his daybook in court for inspection by counsel. The Assize calendar was posted in the county court vestibule on February 28th, and the case was listed for the first day of the March sessions. For a moment no one moved. The Assize preparations concluded with the clerk's minute that the exhibits would be produced in court and that the jury would be empanelled on the morning of March 1st. The jail at the county town received the accused on January 22nd and assigned her to a condemned ward cell measured in the register as 8 feet by 6, lit by a single barred window facing north and furnished with a plank bed, a coarse wool blanket and a wooden chair. Each morning the wardress brought a tin cup of weak tea and a measure of bread, recorded in the ward ration book as half a loaf and a pint of tea. The jail surgeon visited on Mondays and noted general health and the appearance of the hands. His visiting notes of February 3rd record the accused's height as 5 feet 2 inches and that her hands trembled when she signed the intake form. The chaplain attended on Tuesdays, and the chaplain's log records short prayers and a visit of 20 minutes on January 26th. The wardress's daily memorandum notes the rattle of keys, the metallic echo of bolts, and the distant clang of iron gates at each hour. Dampness clung to the walls, slick beneath her fingertips. The accused was allowed legal interviews in the prison parlour and the solicitor's memorandum records conferences on February 10th and again on February 22nd, as the defence prepared witness lists and lines of argument. A small parcel of mending was noted in the wardress's log. She spent hours mending a small garment, the wardress wrote on February 17th, and the same entry recorded that the accused hummed softly while sewing. The wardress also recorded that the accused gave her bread ration to a younger prisoner on February 20th, and that she declined new boots when issued on the day of her arrival. The prison ledger records 2 letters received, one from a sister and one from a neighbouring relative, both retained unopened in the office until inspected by the governor. Cold rose from the stone floor through the thin soles of her boots. The solicitor made 2 applications to inspect the chemist's original working notes. The governor's office noted the requests on the jail docket and forwarded them to the clerk of the assize. The wardress's log contains the entry. She asked the chaplain only, "Will they let me see my children before?" recorded on February 25th. The surgeon recorded the accused's hands as shaking when she signed a statement on February 27th, and the prison number assigned in the register remained in the margin of that sheet. The weeks in the condemned ward were counted in routine: bracelet of keys at dawn, breakfast, exercise in the small yard, visits, prayers, lights out. The chaplain's note of February 28th records a final private prayer, and the wardress's memorandum records the accused refusing meat the day before the removal to court. The prison register recorded her removal to the Assize Court on the morning of March 1st, and the jail van left the yard in a line with other conveyances, the gate clanging behind them. On March 1st, the Assize Court convened at the County Hall, and the sheriff's officer called the panel for jury empanelling at 9:15. The clerk swore the jurors and the foreman signed the jurors' roll. The judge entered, and the court officer announced the first case at 9:40. The prosecutor opened the Crown's case and presented the chemist's certificate and the parcel exhibits to the clerk, who placed them upon the table with their seals intact. The chemist took the stand and gave his evidence to the court regarding methods and reagents used in his Marsh Test. The chemist told the court, "The Marsh Test produced a metallic mirror, and the amount recovered from the stomach contents was consistent with an arsenical compound." No, the workhouse surgeon was called and described the child's symptoms, the stomach corrosion, and the preserved samples lodged with the coroner's office. The apothecary produced his daybook in court, and the clerk read the entry into the record, after which the prosecution offered it as an exhibit. The apothecary told the court, "I sold white powder on the date specified and have entered it in my book." Rain drummed steadily against the narrow windows. The defense counsel cross-examined the apothecary on his recollection and on the legibility of his entries, and the apothecary admitted that his daybook had been written in haste on market days. The defense then called a handwriting expert from the county clerk's office, who compared parish samples with the daybook transcription. The defense witness replied, "The handwriting could belong to anyone in the parish." The judge charged the jury on points of identification and the law of malice aforethought at 2 o'clock, instructing them to consider whether the chemical evidence and the apothecary's record linked the accused to the administration of a fatal dose. The courtroom fell silent, save for the scratch of the clerk's pen. The jury retired to consider their verdict at 2 o'clock, the foreman carrying the exhibit list and the judge's written instructions on points of law, and the court officer noted their departure in the docket. They returned in 17 minutes. Guilty. The court recorder read the verdict aloud, and the clerk entered it in the assize parchment book with the judge's signature and the court seal affixed. The judge pronounced sentence according to law, and the recorder entered the sentencing in the court's parchment book with the judge's signature and the court seal affixed. Death. The prisoner was remanded to the custody of the sheriff, and the assize officer noted the making of the death warrant and its transmission to the jail governor. Shadows lengthened across the courtroom floor as afternoon wore on. The court's transcript records witness names, exhibits, and the judge's charge. The warrant bore the date of March 3rd and directed that the execution be carried out according to statutory procedure at the county jail. The death warrant issued on March 3rd and the jail governor notified the chaplain and the surgeon, whose names were recorded in the jail ledger as present. The condemned cell ledger records the time of removal on the day of execution. The jail register shows she was taken from her cell at 7:45 in the morning and listed the attendants as the governor, the chaplain, the surgeon, and 2 wardresses. Fog hung over the prison yard, muffling the sound of the city beyond the walls. The chaplain's notes record prayers read at 7:50 and a short exhortation delivered in the condemned ward. The governor's minute notes the prisoner's clothing as a plain black dress and a cotton cap provided by the jail tailor. The wardress recorded that the prisoner braided her hair before the chaplain's visit. The procession left the condemned ward at 8 o'clock. The jail bell tolled once as they moved through the corridor, and the footsteps on flagstone echoed. The execution was conducted upon the platform erected within the jail yard, and the official witness book records the presence of the governor, the chaplain, the surgeon, and 2 wardresses. Their names entered in the witness book with the time of death to be recorded by the surgeon. The surgeon performed the necessary observations and signed the death certificate upon pronouncing death. The surgeon's note records a pronounced cessation of respiration and the absence of pulse at 8:03. The executioner performed his duty according to the prescribed procedure, and the body was declared dead by the surgeon, who signed the death certificate immediately thereafter. 8:03. The body was removed to the jail mortuary. The prison bell tolled 3 times, and the burial in the unconsecrated ground was entered in the burial register as grave number 73. The jail surgeon signed the death certificate, and the jail clerk recorded the disposal of clothing and the inventory of the prisoner's personal effects, which included a scrap of hand-sewn linen and a letter retained in the governor's safe. As she was led to the platform, she turned once toward the cell passage, then faced forward, an action noted in the chaplain's final entry. The jail burial book and the assize transcript were transferred to the county record office, and the files were marked with the assize docket number. The prison register records her burial in the unconsecrated ground, grave number 73, and the county archive holds the trial transcript, the chemist's certificate, and the apothecary's ledger bearing the name that convicted her. The apothecary's entry had been written in a hurried hand.